Well, that could have gone a little better.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, HSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Bama Online's Jimmy Stein is normally him, but not today. He went to the game just like I did. He's not going to be able to make it for this kind of sort of instant reaction because I just got back from Tuscaloosa, so not actually instant. Do want to thank FanDuel for being a sponsor of this particular live broadcast, and want to thank you everydayers who are here every day, and thank you newbies for being here today. You guys are the absolute best, and this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. That could have gone better. That was rough, and Auburn led wire to wire. First of all, kudos to Auburn for coming into an incredibly hostile environment. And taking care of business. They did what they need to do. I really hate it when people say taking care of business, but I said it now. And this whole, I'm seeing some folks chime in, Alabama is awful. They lost the number one team in the country, and Alabama couldn't throw it in the ocean. Some of that was because of Auburn. And certainly we'll get into that in just a minute. Just want to give my instant reaction from having been there tonight. Jimmy and I will talk more about specifics tomorrow on the show. But, first of all, kudos to the crowd. Really, really appreciate everybody showing out the way they did. And there was a monster crowd, great environment, and loved being a part of it. It was a lot of fun. Got there very early, and a lot of people got there very early. And it was good to see, and I think we need to see more of that. I know that Coleman's a little bit bigger, and it's not always the easiest thing in the world, and blah, 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 to get there and park and all that stuff. But this team needs that kind of support. I thought Alabama, the game was, you hate to say the game was lost at this point, but the game was really decided right at the very beginning. Auburn gets out to a 9-0 start, and Alabama just couldn't get anything going. And they couldn't get anything going all day. And a lot of that is because of Auburn. They played good defense. Some of it is Alabama was also just off. And I do think that this Bama team was very tense. They probably were a little anxious by this game. This game was a big deal. It had a lot of hype. And frankly, I think Auburn came in without any pressure. Sort of like, as far as I've been seeing on message boards, most Auburn people are like, yeah, we'll probably split with Alabama and, go in there and lose this game. And then, we'll see what happens. And we'll blow them out in Neville. Well, I think Auburn came in with very little to lose. And Alabama just played so tight. They could not get a shot going. I'll also say this. That's the second game this year where Alabama has played about a 3-hour basketball game. That's ridiculous. That's completely on the officials. I had some Auburn people who were clearly upset about some officiating. I had some Alabama people that were clearly upset about some officiating. I thought the officials were just poor. It was a poorly officiated game, start to finish. I think they could have fixed some of these things. Incredibly inconsistent, and that's a problem. But that's been a problem. So that's not the reason Alabama lost. I don't want anybody to say that. I do, again, want to give a shout out to the crowd. I want to give a shout out to the people that recognized me from the podcast. I had 4 or 5 people come up to me. One guy actually very in a cool way didn't even say, hey, Luke. He just slapped me on the back and said, you're on mute. Touche, sir. Touche. Now, Pat Adams, as I'm seeing some Auburn fans and Alabama fans in the comments saying he just needs to be put to pasture. I totally agree. He's awful. He's awful. I don't like him as an official. I just don't think he needs to officiate games anymore. Now, Jimmy and I are going to talk more about the game itself tomorrow. I need to digest a little bit more of it. But really what I wanted to go live about was this. I've been getting some texts from folks on group text where, and I think these things ring true. that some people are worried, you know what, if Alabama goes to Missouri, you may see some people begin to give up on this team a little bit. I think give up's a big way to put it, probably a little hyperbolic, but I think some people are going to be, oh yeah, just same old Bama basketball. Guys, this is the new Bama. This is going to be the new Auburn too. Top 5, top 10 matchups a lot. Auburn's going to come in and they're going to be good. We're going to have to be ready to play. Alabama's going to go to Neville and they're going to be good. Auburn's going to have to be ready to play. Alabama hadn't lost a road game in the conference. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And we played in some pretty tough venues like Mississippi State, like Texas A&M, like Kentucky, like Arkansas. Now, I know Arkansas is not as good as they normally are. Still, we have played in some very intimidating venues so far this year, and we've won them all. Texas gave Auburn everything they wanted earlier. And so I think people need to understand, look, this is not the end of the world. I did speak a little bit to Brian Pasek after the game. We didn't go into much, just exchange a few texts. And he's really of the same thought that, you know, look, this is not the end of the world. Jimmy and I said this on the pod before the game ever tipped off, that this loser could still win the national championship. The loser could also go on to lose the next game in this series and then lose in the SEC championship game against this same team and still win the national championship. I wholeheartedly believe that. I will say this game gave me some vibes about the Kentucky-Bama series when Kentucky beat Bama 4 times in the same year back in the 80s. I remember that pretty well. You know, by getting some pretty god-awful comments from somebody that has decided to chime in. Lord, I hope all of y'all didn't see those. But I did want to read a few of these comments. Jeremy says, too many missed free throws. 100%. Jimmy and I will talk about that tomorrow. That's something that's been a problem all year. And by the way, Auburn didn't miss a lot. They missed some towards the end, but by that time it was a little late. And he said, where was Aiden Sherrill? I get it. But it's not like Aiden Sherrill and Michael Southern chimes in with 85-86 this season. They lost to Kentucky 4 times in a row. I knew it was in that neighborhood. But he says, where was Aiden Sherrill? I get why Aiden Sherrill didn't play. It's not like he was playing a bunch of minutes anyway. So I don't think it's a huge problem. I think it could be a huge problem perhaps later on when you're trying to convince somebody not to transfer, because that's the way the world works now in college sports. But I'm not super disappointed he didn't play in this particular game. I wouldn't say that. I would say Darian Reed is a better defender, in my opinion. And so I get why Darian Reed played a little more in that spot. The one thing I would say is Grant Nelson, he just did not have a good game. He looked bad. The one time when he tried to take off from the free throw line for whatever reason, and I think he got halfway there and realized, I'm not going to make it. That was sort of nutty. Sarah Keller chimes in and says Auburn took away the 3. They did take away some threes, 100%. I'm not trying to say Alabama just had an off game. Don't get me wrong. Auburn had a lot to do with that. But when Alabama had the opportunities, they also didn't make them. And when Alabama was at the free throw line, Alabama didn't make it. And somebody says we are number blanking too, 100%. I don't know if you're saying that in a way of we're number 2, we should win that game, or we're number 2, don't worry about it. I'm sort of the we're number 2, I'm not super worried about it. I was not nearly as upset about losing this game as I thought I would be. It certainly dawned on me very early, this could be a tough one to come back from. When we tied it up, it certainly made things exciting for a moment, and that's where I'm going to pick up when I come back right after this. But I do want to tell you all about FanDuel. FanDuel is fantastic. FanDuel is a great place to just get in on the action if y'all want to be in on the action, and I know you do. When the game tips off, NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, You can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you missed the opening tip-off or won a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get 150 smacks and bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at 150 smacks and bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. By the way, I think the NBA All-Star Slam Dunk thing comes on tonight. I probably won't watch it. It hasn't been good in a few years. But anyway, Sarah Keller also chimes in with, y'all are better than Duke. State of Alabama is the best two teams in the nation. I agree. Look, I think this Alabama team can beat. I don't think this Auburn team is unbeatable. I think Alabama can beat it. I think they had an off night and Auburn played well. I think if the reverse happens in Neville, I certainly think Alabama can win. Justin Clayton, who I know is an Auburn fan, said Bama missed some really close shots. Aiden layup, Stevenson point blank, several threes, could have easily went Alabama's way. I totally agree. And I saw a stat, and again, after Carl Ravitch's repeat of a stat that was practically mind-numbing, I'm hesitant to do this. But I saw it on Twitter, so take it with a grain of salt, as they say on the message boards. But Alabama was something like 11 of 25 around the hoop with shots. That's not all Auburn just blocking shots. That is Alabama missing some shots. Mo Diabate had a couple. I'm talking about just right there, pat the backboard, and it rolls off. And the other thing, when I knew it kind of wasn't going to be our night, Auburn got every roll you can get on those. They just got every roll you could get, and it sometimes it's just that way. It's just that way. There's no supernatural force. There's nothing. It's just the way it is for that day. So I think that I can live with that. And here's the biggest key of all this, right? And this is only going to be a 2-segment thing because it's just me by myself with no Jimmy, so y'all bear with me. The one thing that worries me the most is not losing to Auburn and not how that perception is, because I'm going to say it again. The crowd was magnificent. A glaring exception. I don't even mind the students so much saying the F Auburn stuff. I was sitting right beside it. By the way, a shout out to Michael Southern, who got me a ticket for this game. Appreciate you, brother. Go follow him, Tide Hoops History on Twitter. It's a great Twitter follow, and he does a magnificent job with it. And if you're an Alabama you think you're an Alabama basketball fan. He's an Alabama basketball fan. We're all just in his little universe. So go check out Michael Southern. Great dude. Really enjoyed getting to know him today. But I sat next to the student section, and I think that the students are going to be the students. One thing that ticked me off about the student section today, by the way, shout out to the student section for showing up. They were there early. Appreciate all that. There were 3 turds, and I don't know another way to say it, who threw stuff onto the court as Alabama was making the comeback. I think Alabama had either cut it to 3 or 1, and people got so excited they just threw stuff. Like, what are you doing? I mean, there wasn't a bad call. There wasn't a bad nothing. It was just a jerk for the sake of being a jerk. Don't do that. Why on earth? I mean, and Nate Oates, give him a lot of credit. For those of you out there who don't like him, he got on the mic and said, don't do that. What are you, stupid? Why? That makes no sense. It's sort of the act like you've been there a little bit. I mean, I'm sitting here always getting upset with people who are sitting like this on the front row, right? Today, they didn't do that. They almost act like they've been there too much. So I want you to act like you've been there some. Just don't throw stuff. Kickback says, Auburn took Bama to the woodshed and made them like it. What a shame. Kickback, I will remind you that Alabama did tie this game at 63. They had a chance to take a 3-point lead. Mark Sears had a good look at a 3 and missed it. He hits that. It's probably a different outcome. But he didn't hit it. That's the whole thing, and that's what Alabama's got to work on. They've got some things to work on, and here's the other thing. Auburn is more stable than we are. They are steady Eddie as a basketball team this year. And I attribute a lot of that to experience. They are steady Eddie. You know what you're going to get. Some Auburn fans say, well, what about the Florida game? Florida just outplayed you that particular game. I don't necessarily think Florida is 100% the better team. I think Florida outplayed you that particular game. And I think that Auburn is still the most steady team in the nation. Now, does that mean I think they're going to win the national championship? They could. But I also think that Alabama could. I also think that Florida could. I also think even somebody like Texas A&M could. Certainly Duke could. In the tournament, it's a little bit different. And Seth Keller says CBM shouldn't have slapped that dude. And Justin Clayton, my buddy who's also an Auburn fan, said that's just who he is. And that is who he is. Now, that's a problem. I didn't want to get on here and even talk about him because, like, I don't want to feel like I'm whining about that at all because I think the refs ultimately got that right. But I think he fouls a lot more than he gets called for. I think that some of his antics are completely uncalled for. I think hitting somebody in the face like that. Again, if you were upset a couple years ago or last year that Mo Wagee stepped on Janai Broome, if you're an Auburn fan, go ahead and own the fact that CBM does that stuff on the regular too. That's just own it. And I'm not going to say it's not why Alabama lost. It's not any of that stuff. I'm just saying that that's the way it is. Living Life said, man, you got home fast. You're still on mute. Hey, look, God knows, I hope I'm not on mute. No, I'm not. I have to double check. Justin says it is a problem. He will cost Auburn another game. A la Yale, thought it would be tonight. Give Auburn credit for overcoming that, is what I say. And I'm going to say this again. I think these are the best two teams in the country. Yes, Auburn came into Alabama's house and won in one of the best environments I've ever been in when it comes to Coleman Coliseum. I've been in that airport hangar a lot. And it was a fantastic environment. And appreciate everybody that showed up. I appreciate everybody took time. And I know there were a lot of disappointed people leaving. I know there were. I saw you. But just understand, it's not the end of the world. And as I told Michael Southern, Living Life says, I'm kidding. I was the guy after the game that spoke to you. Thank you, Living Life. I'm glad. Way to show up. Appreciate you, bro. But this isn't the end of the world. And as I told Michael Southern, we were leaving, he said, man, we can't have any more mistakes. We won the SEC. And I said, I hate to say this, and I hate to feel this way. I'm not worried about the SEC. It's nice to hang a banner. It's nice if we win the SEC tournament. It's great. And if we are in the championship, you can bet your bottom dollar I'll be pulling for it. I'm worried about the NCAA tournament. That's the way this system is set up. Because I'll tell you this, just like I saw last year with Auburn. Auburn had a nice regular season. They win the SEC tournament. They go out in the first round, and people call it a disappointment. That's a shame. That's not the way it should be. That's the way people look at it. I don't hear anybody talking about Auburn winning the SEC tournament last year. I hear everybody talking about Auburn losing to Yale. That's wrong. That shouldn't be the way. Auburn should be proud they won that SEC tournament, but it's the way it is, right? So if Alabama comes in third or fourth in the SEC, as long as we get the double bye, let's get that double bye, right? So as long as we do that, I'm not worried about it. I want to win it, but it's not like football to me. And in fact, football isn't like football to me anymore, because as long as you get in the 16 team or however many 12 teams, it's going to be 16, 12 team playoffs. That's all that matters. So the SEC championship really isn't that big of a deal anymore. I hate that it is that way, but it is that way. Kickback says, consider smashing that thumbs up button. Feel free to subscribe. Would love for y'all to subscribe. Jimmy Stein is usually here with me. If you know Jimmy Stein, he's a good dude. He loves him some Alabama stuff. He's actually going to dinner tonight, I think, with potentially Reese Davis and another friend of ours. So that would be wonderful. Living Life said Nelson had Broome in his head, altered a lot of his shots. I don't know that that's true. Nelson's got to learn to get over that. I mean, I'm not dogging Grant Nelson. He's not the reason we lost, even though his plus minus was like minus 20. But man, he needs to, don't worry about taking off from the free throw line when, by the way, I'm not sure that you could have made that dunk if nobody was there. He took off from the free throw line And it looked like Wile E. Coyote when he's still chasing after the Roadrunner, after the Roadrunner jukes him out, and he goes off the cliff and he's still running in the air, and then all of a sudden he holds up the sign and says, "Help." That's what I thought Grant Nelson was going to do. Hold up the sign and said, "Uh-oh." And that was rough. But look, I want everybody that's out there listening to this. I know there's some Auburn fans hate watching, and, hey, all I can say is congratulations, better team won tonight. That's all I can say. But I'll say this. If you're an Alabama fan, keep your head up. It's going to be all right. This team's only lost 4 games. One of them was to the number one team in the country. One of them was to Ole Miss, and that looks a little worse tonight after Mississippi State bludgeoned them at their own place. One of them was to Oregon early in Las Vegas. That looks a little worse because Oregon's fallen off a hair. And one of them was to Purdue, who Purdue unquestionably just had a brain gas losing to Wisconsin today. But they're all decent teams. Alabama didn't drop one to Louisiana, who's your mama. They didn't lose to one of those, right? So just keep your head up. It's going to be all right. This team is I think they're going to learn from this. But what is scary to me is if they don't learn from it and they go to Missouri at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night, probably not going to be the best crowd in the world, but going to be a crowd enough. And if Auburn is still in their heads and they go to Missouri and drop this game, by the way, Missouri just went on the road and won at Georgia today. Okay. So I think Alabama's got to go to Missouri, take care of business. Then they come back next Saturday at 5 o'clock against Kentucky, who is the bluest blood of all the blue bloods, who's still pretty good. They swept Tennessee this year. They're playing Texas right now. I have no idea what score it's. We got to beat them too. And then we welcome in a Mississippi State team that's very good, 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. Then the gauntlet starts at Tennessee, Florida at home, at Auburn. So, look, let's just do the best we can do from here on out and let the chips fall where they may. And if we tie for the SEC championship or something, more power to us. This is all about March. So, y'all just keep your heads up. I don't want anybody out there worried about it. It's going to be fine. Jimmy and I will be back tomorrow. We'll talk about this game a lot. We'll also talk about some recruiting. I'm sure I saw some people that I felt like should be recruited today. I have no idea who they were, but I was walking around that little club area. I don't even know what it's called, but I was walking around that, and I saw some dudes a lot bigger than me. And I thought to myself, somebody needs to tell those dudes to come to Alabama because they look like really good offensive linemen. Maybe they were just old people and they're just really big. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate you guys so much. We will be back tomorrow. And until then, roll tide.